Okay, so planning out this video and deciding how I was going to go about this list was a little bit tricky. At first I was stuck on, do I really want to make it a top 10 based off of quality? Because I was going to be stuck here for 5 hours trying to really decide who's better than who, and that's very difficult when you get to the top tiers of antagonists. Also, I didn't really want to do it on just preference either, because then there were going to be some villains that are clearly deserving of being in this top 10, but sadly would not make it due to my own personal preferences. And so I thought maybe it would be a good idea to go for a draft instead. Basically, if I had 10 picks, who would be the first 10 that I would decide and choose based off of different factors, and I thought that was the easiest way for me to go about it. Now, one of the rules that I did implement, that way I could get a little more versatility within my list, is I limited to myself one character or one antagonist per series. Therefore, there wouldn't be repeats from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Hunter x Hunter, Naruto, you get the point. And so, with all that out of the way, if you are new to the channel, like, comment, subscribe, turn on the bell notifications, all of the good stuff, and cue the intro. Now, with the 10th pick in the anime/manga draft, whatever, I have Frieza from Dragon Ball Z. Frieza is easily the best antagonist in Dragon Ball Z. Cell is cool, and Boo is my personal favorite. If I had to pick the biggest antagonistic force that I was well accustomed to from my childhood up till now, I definitely think Frieza is deserving. Despite him not having this super deep backstory or this moral gray complexity that some of the other antagonists on this list do have, Frieza is bad to the bone. The man is a staple model for what an antagonist should be like when it comes to just being purely evil. Frieza did the job, and the Frieza saga will always be one of my favorite sagas in all of anime. Now, with the 9th pick, I have Reiner from Attack on Titan, and Attack on Titan, as well as Hunter x Hunter, which will be later on in this list, are a little bit tricky to talk about because you can argue which character is really the antagonist and which one isn't, and Reiner definitely wouldn't have been on this list considering what was happening early on, but later on in the Attack on Titan manga, when you kind of get to see things from his perspective, and really when Attack on Titan just kicks it into full gear after chapter 50, I really do think he becomes extremely deserving of being picked, and Attack on Titan being in my top 10, I thought it was appropriate to have an antagonist from Attack on Titan on this list. I don't really have much else to say because whatever I could say about his character would probably spoil things, and I know when it comes to Attack on Titan, spoilers are like a huge issue. So moving on to my number 8 pick. At number 8, I have Garou from One Punch Man. I love One Punch Man. I really do. I've been reading it, getting caught up on some of the things, and the man is an absolute GOAT from when he's introduced up until now. He honestly adds a completely new dynamic to the One Punch Man manga that I really do enjoy. I love everything about his character, and despite him maybe not being super complex again compared to other antagonists, I think the way he approaches his role as an antagonist, and this pick was definitely one that had a little more preference leaning on it, but I think Garou is deserving of a top 10, or at least a top 15 antagonist list, especially if you're not allowed to repeat certain characters within a series. Garou does his job well, and he contrasts Saitama perfectly, somebody who's had to really just, it seems, work a lot harder to get the strength that he has, but still being under Saitama. Again, being fourth wall breaking with the way he perceives himself as a monster is something that attracts me a lot as a reader. Plus, he's my favorite One Punch Man character, so yeah. Now, with my 7th pick, I have Doflamingo. My favorite One Piece character, my favorite antagonist in all of One Piece. If I could have any power in One Piece or any devil fruit, it would be the string fruit. I'm just a huge Doflamingo fan. Everything from the way he carries himself, his abilities, his powers. Doflamingo has some of my favorite sayings within all of manga as well. It's a shame that Dressrosa as an arc was a little bit sloppy and it was completely carried by Doflamingo, but despite that, he was just such a phenomenal antagonist that despite him not maybe having the best arc, the man was a GOAT. Doflamingo's an extremely intriguing case as well because he's not somebody who I would say is morally gray. The man definitely comes off as pure evil from birth, but his reasonings for being so mad and evil seem a bit justified due to the horrible past that he had. However, upon further examination, you just kind of know this kid was born twisted and sick. Also, side note, this man has one of the best villain laughs in all of anime as well. So yes, with my 7th pick, Doflamingo. Now, moving on to my 6th pick. Now, if I were to be drafting against other YouTubers or other friends of mine and we had to then compete for who we get to keep, this character would definitely be as high as number 3 on my list because I would try to get him before anybody else. But since it's just me, at number 6, I have Askeladd. Thorfinn is amazing, but if I had to pick the best character in Vinland Saga from the start to his eventual finish, I would have to pick Askeladd. Askeladd really does the role of an antagonist beautifully. Again, he would be as high as top 3, since Askeladd, like some of the other ones that are higher up on this list, do a great job of really contrasting the protagonist. And that's something that I love to see from an antagonist within a series, is when they have these parallels connected to the protagonist, and it's two characters that seem to have such a deep bond and connection, but yet are pitted against each other because of fate, because of destiny, because of factors that are not entirely in their control. Now, Askeladd did kind of have it coming because of what he did, but then again, that's kind of how things were done at the time. When you're first introduced to Askeladd, it's very evident that he's somebody who doesn't have necessarily the best morals, but he's a character who from the get-go has such charisma and wisdom that he would make a phenomenal leader whether you agreed with him or not. And then, of course, his dynamic and relationship with Thorfinn is beautifully written. Vinland Saga fans know what it is. Askeladd at my number 6. Now, with my 5th pick, this was extremely tough because, as I said earlier, I could only pick one from this series, and I'm talking about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and I was really stuck between Yoshigaki Kira, Dio, and Funny Valentine. Pucci is cool and whatnot, but no, it's those 3 for me, and Diavolo. Shouts out to Diavolo as well. However, when it comes to Dio, Yoshigaki Kira, and Funny Valentine, it was a combination of quality and preference. And when I combined those two and I had to pick which one I would draft, I would go with Yoshigaki Kira. The man has my favorite stand in all of JoJo's, Killer Queen, referencing the song, and he's just such a sick antagonist and works so well. I find it to be very interesting how he has such a sick and twisted mind, but yet he talks about wanting to be a normal human being, despite again being Osama bin Laden's wet dream. He really does seem like such a real character, and that's due large in part to the setting of JoJo's Part 4, and we see his dynamic when he seems to start falling in love with a woman, but yet he's such a sick, twisted individual, and he kind of runs the entire part without having to be present all of the time, which is a huge bonus for an antagonist. So yeah, Yoshigaki Kira, love the guy, my favorite JoJo's character, my number 5. Okay, so this next one was extremely difficult as well, again, because I could only pick one from the Hunter x Hunter series, and of course, Meruem, Chrollo, Hisoka. And so, again, I had to put myself in the mindset of which one would I pick if I was drafting against other people. Like, who would I try to get the quickest? What would be my first reaction? Now, even though Hisoka is my favorite Hunter x Hunter character, my mind instantly screamed Meruem, so I was like, screw it, I'll write that one on the list. Meruem's progression from this killer monster, much kind of like Frieza is in Dragon Ball, to this extremely human character is beautiful, especially when you contrast that and compare it with Gon, who slowly develops into the darkness, on top of Meruem just being one of the coolest and most fierce fighters within Hunter x Hunter and extremely sick moveset and abilities. The man also, unlike most shonen antagonists, actually was given a perfect ending for his character, and although on the rate the villain thing there were some people who were trying to say Meruem isn't an antagonist, when the time he's presented and the way he's kind of categorized is as an antagonist, I've never seen anybody put Meruem on a top 10 protagonist list. They just don't do it. And when it comes to Chrollo and Meruem, those are two characters that I would expect to be in most people's top 15, top 10 antagonists, but again, since I could only pick one, I went with good old Meruem. And so now we move on to my top 3 picks in this draft. At my number 3, I have Pain, aka Nagato from Naruto. Pain is the best antagonist in Naruto. Madara had it. He was running for that crown, and then he got pushed off of the racetrack. And even though Obito is my favorite Naruto character, Pain is my second favorite Naruto character, and of course, if I had a draft in between the two, I'm gonna pick Pain. Very few characters can be the embodiment and literal personification of their philosophy, as well as contrast and parallel the protagonist so well, but this man manages to do it. With his somewhat god complex and his abilities of the Rinnegan, which are my favorite abilities in all of Naruto, as well as having arguably the best speech in all of anime with the cycle of hatred, Pain is like one of the best examples of how to write an antagonist, how to build him up, and how to give him a proper send-off. Although you can argue Pain being talk no jutsu'd is a little bit of a downfall, I think him being talk no jutsu'd by someone like Naruto, again, a character who he mirrors almost perfectly, it really did make sense to his entire character. I think the legacy of Pain would have been much better if Naruto had ended at that point. However, despite all of that, if I had to pick, I would not let Pain slip past my top 5. Now, moving on to number 2 and number 1. Now, originally this was going to be 1A and 1B, but because I couldn't really think of another character to put in that number 2 spot, since I'm not repeating, I was just like, I'll just make it 1 and 2. And these are both characters that are like the greatest antagonist of all time, and if you have this guy at your number 1, I perfectly get it. I just personally have him at number 2. With my second pick in the anime/manga antagonist draft, I have Johan from Monster. Here's the thing with Johan. Part of, again, the thing I was trying to play in my head when drafting is Monster isn't really up there in terms of popularity, hence why in my one video I called it the most underrated manga ever, because I hardly ever hear about it. Hence why I'm personally comfortable with letting Johan be my second pick and not my first. Johan, oh my goodness. Listen, if you have not read Monster, I implore you to read Monster. It is like Death Note, if Death Note was perfect. Monster is so good, and Johan is such a phenomenal antagonist. So imagine Yoshigaki Kira, but like cranked up a few notches, and then take away the explosive stand, and that's pretty much what Johan is like. He seems like this perfectly normal guy, but the dude is insane. One of the things about Johan that you notice when reading Monster is how he seems to have an impact and his fingerprints all over every single character throughout the entire series, and it is nuts. The symbolization that they use with this little story they tell about the monster with no name is so beautifully done, and again, his parallels and contrast with Dr. Tenma. Johan is one of the greatest antagonists of all time. Again, read Monster. They also have an anime. You can watch the anime if you want. I heard it's a really good adaptation. Do yourself a favor. That man is a GOAT. Okay, and with my first pick in the anime/manga antagonist draft, I have Griffith from Berserk. Y'all should have saw this coming. The thing that Johan arguably has over Griffith is that Johan's character already has an ending, Monster has ended, and so Griffith's character could arguably become even better depending on the ending Berserk has, or it can stay the same. I don't really see Griffith's character going down based off of an ending, knowing the kind of author that Miura is. And the thing is with Griffith, unlike most of the other antagonists that we have on this list, with the exception I would say of maybe Meruem, is that we kind of grow up with this character and watch his entire development in front of our eyes. A lot of the other antagonists that we're presented to within anime or manga, they're introduced and then we find out their backstory in a short few amount of episodes, but we see where Griffith started and we see his development and eventual fall into darkness. I can say this with the utmost confidence that Johan, Kira, and Griffith are probably the most realistic feeling antagonists that I've ever read. The way that they kind of go about, the way their dialogue is presented within the manga, their interactions with other characters, and especially when it comes to Griffith, him questioning if what he's doing at the current moment is morally correct, for him to then sweep that under the rug to follow his ambition, is something that is very human of him. And along with Johan, Pain, and I would say Meruem, Griffith is the perfect example of contrasting and paralleling the protagonist. And even after when Griffith falls into darkness and becomes Femto, his fingerprint and feel and kind of control, strangle, chokehold that him and the rest of the God Hand have over the entire series, despite in certain parts not making appearances halfway through the manga, is absolutely insane. And the feeling that Griffith really does give you speaks to his incredible writing. He's somebody that you hate with a burning passion, but yet his level and quality of writing is undeniable. And so those would be my 10 draft picks when it comes to anime manga protagonists. Again, there are certain series that I have not seen yet, therefore I cannot speak on them, but I'm pretty confident with those 10. I think it's a solid 10. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you are new to the channel, again, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as well as turn on the bell notification. It really does make a massive difference. I'm gonna see if I can maybe hit anywhere from 70 to 100,000 subs by the end of this year. And as always, this has been the Masked Man. Hope everyone has a blessed rest of the day, and peace.